So it's been a long time coming. I'm really glad we decided to do this. So I'm Quentin. Everyone calls me Q, so I'm just going to call myself Q because eventually that's what everyone's going to call me anyway. I'm here with Sam and Russell. Russell, glad to have you on the microphone.
Thanks for having me, Quentin.
Sam, same here.
Thanks for having me.
I already know how this is going to go with Sam.
Thanks for having me. No. Okay.
But yeah, the whole idea of what we're doing today is just to simply, we need to have conversations from people from different walks of life and just have an open discussion. And I really wanted, I'm really grateful that I'm friends with Russell. And then I've been Russell, I've been friends with Sam for like 1,000 years by now at this point. So like, that's a different story. But like I think our situation is a little unique. How we met. At first, we weren't cool with each other at all, but then we communicated and began to realize, okay, you know what? Okay, there's a lot there that we just don't understand about each other, which eventually turned into inbox on Facebook, if I'm not mistaken. Right? We were inboxing on Facebook.
Yeah, I sent you a private message.
Right, and then that came to like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Why are we going back and forth in the first place? There's a lot in common. And
let's find our commonalities.
That's kind of what
There's
happened.
a lot out here dividing everybody. Let's try to find the truth somewhere in the middle.
And that's kind of what inspired me to do podcasting was from people saying I should do it, but also like I'm beginning to understand like the polarization of how America is currently. I feel like it's orchestrated because it's not how I didn't grow up like that. Like you could have separate views and then you could still, have a barbecue together.
Yes.
And now it's kind of like
it's become our identities.
Yes, and that's not how it should be. But I feel like that's orchestrated because if a people divided can't be effective against an oligarchic ideology, whatever is going on. But in barbershops, you'd be surprised how many people. The stereotype is black men are supposed to vote a certain way. I'm in barbershops. I hear opinions and ideas that will blow people's minds if they actually heard it. So that's kind of what this is. This is like an open forum where regular working people from Western New York, we get together.
All different walks of life, all different people, all different backgrounds.
And we just talk. We talk about what's going on, what the reality is. But I did want to touch on, I spent a few minutes on how Russell and I met. If Russell, you want to just kind of go over that in your own opinion, how things went, or just your experience with us.
Well, it was kind of a racist political argument is what it was. That I'm not even sure that either one of us had a real point at the time as much as we just wanted to be right. And I ended up, it got pretty heated between the two of us, and I took a look at the situation, and we really didn't have a reason to be arguing back and forth, not really. So I sent him a message, and I said, hey, what you think of me is wrong. And let me tell you the reality. And he listened, and I explained to him my reality. And he admitted openly he was absolutely incorrect. And I did the same thing about him. And then he took it one step further and went back on Facebook to the forum we were arguing in and apologized publicly and admitted, quote, I was wrong. And from that day,
I remember that.
We had a handshake through the internet, and we've been good online friends. We recently met for some chicken wings for the first time about a month and a half ago after about 3 years of online friendship. And I'm
you guys Lady
terminal
in the Trampet?
liver failure.
Was your Lady in the Trampet?
Yeah, like a flat wing.
Oh my God. So don't pay Sam any attention. I can visualize what he's saying right now. No.
Okay, moving on.
Okay, the Buffalo version of that.
I didn't mean to
we may have shared blue cheese.
Okay. Now we're talking.
But yeah, then it kind of, through all that, even before we met in person, I knew about his liver for months.
Mm-hmm.
And that came from like after all of that, just like the initial negative confrontation we had, and then understanding where we're coming from, and then just man to man having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Without other people's
why do you
input.
guys think
that helped a lot?
In both of your opinions, why do you think the rest, or what it seems like the majority of the country, can't do that? Can't just sit down and talk and as just people talk things out?
I think we reached out to each other. We took that leap of faith because the stereotype was there. Like the
Well, what compelled you to do it?
I think that honestly, the biggest problem with racism in America is the ability not to understand.
Not to listen and
People
try to
listen to answer. They don't listen to hear.
That's true.
And coming from different walks of life, now I come from a very small town. In that town, there were 2 black families.
Yeah.
That is it. Very nice fellas. I will omit names here for their, privacy. So I didn't have a lot of interaction. I come from a school that the only black families, them were those 2 families. Very nice folks. Friends with them today. Just nothing bad to say about them at all. But being from such a small community with such a small black community within, a lot of us, when we got out into the real world, into, where we were more intermixed, a lot of us don't know how to deal with that. We don't know how to fit in with other races because we never dealt with that. And seeing people, you as a black man don't understand that unless you came from a small black community and got dropped in a white community.
I see where you're coming from with that.
You know what
You're
I mean?
talking about
It's a matter of understanding.
you only know what you know. Your worldview is shaped by your surrounding environment. So and that's kind of why I had someone who sent me an inbox yesterday, and she was like, "How do you deal with all these crazy opinions that you get online?" And I've developed that.
I can't imagine.
I don't know if it's a thicker skin or what, but I try. If someone's very adamant about their opinion, it's because they want to be heard. If they want to be heard, it's because they want to convey something, and it's not out of a place of hate. It's because if they truly want to communicate.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not talking about somebody, some crazy, but I'm talking about someone truly
Where do you
wants
think
to
the
communicate.
majority lies? In the crazies? Or
I don't think the majority live in the crazy. I think we have a preconceived notion of if an idea sounds radically different. That's how Russell and I were. Like, let me paint the picture here. Like, when I first had an interaction with Russell, it was on a random, I think it was like a Channel 4
always
page.
a Tuesday.
It was like a random Tuesday, and his profile picture was his truck. It wasn't him. So, like, here's a white guy with a picture of a truck, and we're not agreeing.
No.
This is
a man's truck, by the way. This is a big truck, tractor trailer.
It's like when you immediately see the fishing picture, you're just like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Yeah, here we go.
Hey, now, what's wrong with fishing?
I fish. Nothing's wrong with fishing, but
so from my lens,
yes.
So it was just
There's a
only
certain type.
because I had amazing parents growing up, and they taught me, like, you never take anything at face value. Listen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have
So it
turned
started
off.
at home.
It always starts at home. Everything starts at home. You have to, and that's the problem. Like,
So do you believe your parents, how were your parents? Were they, with the 2 black families growing up with, were they open to, were they at the same
The whole
acceptance?
community embraced those
So you were never
African-American
taught the
families
hatred.
as part of the neighborhood.
Yeah, you were never taught the hate.
No, my mom was one of those den mothers in Cub Scouts, and for some reason, one of the black kids there, his mom didn't want him in Cub Scouts. Well, my mom went right up there and had a conversation with the woman, and after about 10, 15 minutes, and she finally convinced her to allow him to come into Cub Scouts, and it turned out it was because the woman didn't have a lot of money, and she couldn't afford the uniforms and stuff.
Yeah.
So my parents picked up the tab. It's a couple dollars, back then, $2, $3 a
but
week.
that speaks volumes already.
Right.
to get him
that's
in
what
there.
I'm trying to get at. Like,
No,
the hate
they
is
were
taught. So, like, I'm understanding how you were able to reach out and be like, hey, let's have
My dad was
we're
a
just trying
part-time
to talk
police
here.
officer. He was a part-time police officer, worked full-time for GM. My mom was a full-time beautician, working folks, brought us up with good moral values, treat people individual, not based on race, religion, and political position, anything else. If you don't like them, knock them out. Nothing else matters.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That was pretty much.
I'd rather be knocked out than like be lied to about you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if you don't like me, fine. Punch me in the face. Like, I wake up like, oh, okay, he doesn't like me. Cool. I can do
Passive aggressiveness is a problem.
passive aggressiveness.
Yeah.
Or like,
It was more
like
of a joke, but it was
No, I
that
get you.
you don't judge somebody
Right.
by the book. Don't read the book based on the cover. It's what the moral was.
And that's what too many people do now. Like, they instantly just
And
assume.
we both did it.
Yeah. But then the upbringing you had and I had kicked in afterwards. And you reached out to me first. And the moment that happened, every prejudice I had shattered. The walls kind of, I'm like, okay, he's reaching out to me. If it was truly just based on like, we just don't like each other, that wouldn't have never happened. So the moment that happens, okay, I'm all ears. Let's have a conversation, see where it goes. And then, yeah, it led to where we are today.
I got a question about that.
Yeah.
Tell the folks listening what you honestly, when you had said to me what you had said to me, you remember that comment about my credit score. And that's what pissed me off. And that's when it started. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to get, that's up to him if he wants to.
Like you were born with like a credit score of 720 or something.
I had a preconceived idea of who he was.
Right.
Again, all I saw was a truck. Like I just saw a truck. I didn't even see a face. So, yeah, but I was wrong for that. But again, this is from 36 years of being shown one way or taught a certain way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I'm not going to lie, as a white, cishet white male, when I'm on TikTok and I see just a trucker, like just a truck, or a guy holding a fish, and they're saying something that you're just like, wow, okay, you never miss church on Sunday, do you, buddy? I have that preconceived notion as well. Like, I'm just going to write off whatever they're saying because they're just that guy. And I'm sure they think the same thing about me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So good for you guys for overcoming that and just
that's what
being
I feel
adults.
like if we can do that, if Russell and I can do that, I'm telling you, unless you're just completely sociopathic and just crazy.
Well, you'll see that pretty soon.
We will see how part 2 goes.
For us, what makes it even more difficult was where I grew up later on in my teen years and what I was taught there. Now, you would ask me about how my parents felt and were raising me in the neighborhood with colored families in the neighborhood. Well, I spent 4.5 years in a lockdown facility, never convicted of a crime, never had broken a law.
This is news to
and
me.
I spent 1.5 years in Wyndham Lawn in Lockport, New York, there, and then was transferred to Father Baker's Baker Hall on Martin Road in Lackawanna, where I spent 3 years in a 24-hour lockdown facility with no release date and never sentenced.
What were
never
the charges?
charged with a crime.
Wow. This is news.
I didn't get along in school.
How old
were you?
Yeah.
It started when I was about 12 or 13. Perfect grades.
This sounds like a violation of a lot of laws and rules.
A lot.
But
and I want you to know to
this
day that in Father Baker's, as well as a lot of these boys' homes, these children homes, these kids are there without a sentence, no release date. They have never been charged with a crime, and they are not criminals. These are kids. Their parents walked away. Mm-hmm. They walked away. Not all.
I'm sorry,
but a damn good part of them. They walked away. I saw a 15-year-old boy that at 6 months old was adopted by a family, and he was raised till he's 15, and he somehow ended up in his home, but they were still supportive. And he was adopted because the mother could not get pregnant. At 15 years old, she got pregnant, and they walked into that boy's home, and they told him, we don't need you anymore. After raising him for 15 years and left him there.
I'm curious, was there a judge in common with a lot of these cases?
Family court judges.
But in a certain district, a certain judge?
Yeah, the judge will just lock you up if the schools don't want you. They'll throw you into a home and they will not release you because empty beds don't get a paycheck every month.
That's what I'm saying. Was there a particular judge that you could?
There was. It was a Niagara County Family Court judge involved.
Wow.
Mm. I was placed with what they call a PINS petition because I didn't get along in school.
Yeah.
And basically what that does, bring you up in front of the family court. Even though you never broke the law, never committed a crime, they decide you're going to jail until we decide.
Do you remember the judge's name?
There was, I want to say, I don't want to say because I'm not exactly sure. It was many years ago.
Would you say off air maybe?
Pardon?
Would you say off air maybe?
Often?
Off air? Like after?
I could probably throw a couple names off air.
Okay, fair enough. Because that sounds like a...
Yeah.
It's been going on for years.
But
and I'm not pointing a
Yeah.
finger just at Niagara County. The family court system has always been against males. It always has, and it's not beatable. It doesn't matter what evidence you have against a mother. You'll never get your kids.
There was just a judge recently. I can't remember what his name was. But he was getting in trouble for this exact thing. He had gotten. Well,
That's been going on for. So my mother was an educator in the school in Niagara Falls City Schools for well over 30 years. She retired about 7 years ago. But I would hear these. So it's funny hearing this from your perspective, Russell, because like I would hear it from my mother's side, and it was more through her lens. It was more or less like we got to save these little black boys from the school to prison pipeline. She called it. And it was the same kind of idea, like pins and all that. They don't really care about rehabilitating you. They want you, like you said, an empty bed doesn't get paid.
That's right.
And I truly, truly believe there's no such thing as a bad kid. It's about their upbringing and what they're raised around and what they experience. If you
I want to say this. I don't mean to interrupt, but this is a message to any person in one of these homes in that position and you can't get out. I know how to get out legally. When you go home to visit your family, you go on down to the military recruitment center and don't tell anybody what you're doing. You sign up on a contract. If they're going to lock your ass up and tell you what to do, get paid for it. And then take your contract back to the home when you get back, hand it to them and say, you want to keep my ass? You argue with the United States government because it belongs to them now.
Yeah. And
that's what I did at 7. They told me flat out, you're not getting out till you're 18. I said, we'll see about that. I left at 17.
And I appreciate you being vulnerable to tell us that story because that's big. Like, how else will you hear that story? How else do you hear about that?
This just happened it was Pennsylvania to 2 judges. They were getting kickbacks, like $200 per kid.
That's insane. That's like another way of trafficking people. Like, that's really what that is. It's just like, because we hear slavery, like, oh, that's over. That's been over for, there's different forms of that. Of course, there's the black market.
Well, let's not even talk about the child abuse that goes on inside them by the staff.
Yeah, it's all about making kids a product and making money off of that.
The things I've witnessed in there, from actual assaults from staff to children, to one of the female staff getting pregnant by one of the children.
That's insane because, especially in today's world.
And how about this one? Not only did it happen, it was common knowledge at the home. It was never investigated or reported.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of times, especially if you go back 20, 30 years, that wasn't talked about with boys. It was never a thing. They didn't focus on if boys
30
were abused,
years ago, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
30 years ago, that wasn't a thing.
And because of the mentality, I actually have a personal story about that. Like when I was 17 in St. Catharines, I was out partying. Should I have been there? No. Should I have been drinking at 17, 18 years old? No. I was not in the situation I needed to be in. However, what happened to me as a result to a 40-year-old woman who took advantage of me in that situation, never investigated. My friends, we were all 17, like, yeah, man, like, whatever happened. But I'm like, man, this is something.
How old
right.
was she?
40. It was her 40th birthday. Her 40th.
Dog.
See, and that's the thing. People instantly go to there. And they're like, oh, man, stop pretending like you some victim.
No, that's child molestation.
It is. But however, the mindset
is. Legally in New York State at 17, you can give consent. This sounds horrible.
And I was inebriated.
But usually the way women are treated in these situations tend to be a little different than the way men are treated in these situations. The tides are starting to turn.
I had to deal with, I didn't realize it was trauma because trauma wasn't a word for men at that point.
Where did you meet?
Where did I meet? I was drunk. I don't even remember.
Okay.
I was 17, maybe 18.
My God.
In a different country, an hour and a half away from the border, at a random party, being fed drinks by a 40-year-old woman who didn't tell me she was 40. I didn't find out till after, like, it was her birthday. And then, like, the balloons fell and all that. And then, like, oh, you're 40. And I remember that. I remember fuzziness. I remember a pink room. And I remember waking up at 4 a.m. on a bench outside.
Hold on.
Yes.
You can't just say I remember a fuzzy pink room.
That's all. It was fuzzy and pink. I remember that.
Do you think she drugged you? Or do you think she just gave you?
I remember lemon gin. And I remember drinking that straight. Like dancing with her and all that. But I remember.
How did she dance? Was it?
It was. I was being taken advantage of from the very beginning.
Oh, I want to know how come these things never happened to me.
See, that's another thing. So like joking, like so like I always like to throw a comedic spin in there because like people are like, well, I was 17 at once. Where was I? Like I would have. However, I will always say, like, everyone can register that differently. And I didn't even realize it was trauma until I got older and started dating.
Right.
And then, like, I was always really passive when it came to, like, being, like, assertive with, like, girls in the bedroom and all that. Like, and they're like, a lot of girls, the main complaint I used to always get was, like, why don't you ever, like, make the first move? And I'm like, I don't know. But come to find out, I saw a therapist about this. And it was because I was afraid that I would become the monster that I didn't know I was even fighting.
Okay.
And as a man, had no idea. I didn't know trauma was a thing. I didn't know the word trauma. I didn't know none of that until I got serious about mental health and, you know, all that. But, like, these situations shape you. So, like, that's just one situation. I take solace in the fact that I could have, like, I shouldn't have been drinking at 17 years old.
Well, you're victim blaming yourself right there.
Yes. But it's also, at the same time, if that were the other way around, if a 40-year-old man got a 17-year-old girl drunk, slipped something in her drink, and which she doesn't remember anything, he's in prison.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, when it happens to boys, no. Like, in your situation, like
the tides, I will say, now there's you hear a lot more about
us as we're 38, 39, 40 years old. We're the working class. We're the ones that do the work the jobs, pay the taxes. We have the biggest impact on votes. We are dealing with shit that we ourselves need to come to grips with because
I'm so tired.
Well, it starts with us. Like, it starts with us. Our generation has to be the linchpin to make change.
I wonder how many different generations. Like, the way I look at this, we're 3 Romans sitting around a fire and just the empire's falling, guys.
Well, in the end, like I said earlier, shit rolls downhill and we're all at the bottom. And I don't care if
Do you think we finally reached the point where just like we're at the bottom of the moat and all the shit is piling on top of us?
Yeah, this country.
When do you feel like it started?
Years ago.
But what administration would you pinpoint like the real tipping point to start this?
No, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear before. I think the entire United States government needs cleared. And start from scratch.
We totally get
like
that.
You believe in like the rewriting of the Constitution never.
No, what we need is people elected that believe in the Constitution that they swore an oath to.
So who do you believe right now is not following their oath to the Constitution?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't pay a lot of attention at all to mainstream media. The things that you look at every day, I don't.
Where do you get your news from?
I watch Congress.
Okay.
I want to hear it from their mouths.
Okay.
From Trump, from Biden, from any of them. I want to hear what they say, and then I'll judge. I don't care what the media has to say. Do you know what the media bias chart to their audience?
You know what the media bias chart is, right?
If I'm looking at it, they're going to tell me what I want to hear. If you're looking at it, they're going to tell him what he wants to hear.
So you watch like C-SPAN? Things like
yeah. No, I actually go right on, I got the Fire Stick. I don't subscribe to cable anymore.
Yeah.
And you go through there and there's 20 different government channels on there. Just click one.
See, I want you to tell us about the media bias chart and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the media bias chart. So every news source there's the far right, which is like Fox News on the media bias chart, and the far left is like an MSNBC. And then it just lists all the different media organizations. And the closer you get to the middle, the most neutral news you're going to get. It's not going to be skewed one way or the other. A lot of those are like NPR, Axios.
Like when I was a kid.
Yeah. Please
broadcast
give me the news.
That's how it went. That started.
Where are the
20
Walter
years ago.
Cronkites?
And actually, I remember reading up on, media, CNN, Fox, all those, they switched to opinion-based news because they realize it makes them a lot more money.
Right.
So, New York Times alone puts out 2 editions. They put out a New York edition, and they put out a California edition, and the headlines for the same subject will be completely opposite of each other.
So you said earlier, like, you don't believe like Thomas Jefferson thought that the Constitution should be written every 20 years or so. You said
I do not believe that.
Okay, so that denotes that you believe at some point we were doing things right.
Yes.
At what point do you think that, at what administration, I should say, or what 2 administrations even, was that tipping point that landed us to where we are right now? If you had to pinpoint
If you're expecting me to say Obama, that's not my answer.
No, I didn't. That's not what I was thinking.
Honestly, I think it all really started to come down back with Carter.
Okay.
Honestly,
why with Carter? Do you think the Iran crisis had a lot to do with that?
I
Or
was
like
quite young.
the energy crisis.
I was quite
during-
young when all that happened, so I don't remember a lot of the particulars.
Okay.
I still remember Reagan speeches and all that.
Okay.
And I enjoy watching them.
Yeah.
Carter is where I really think that the Democratic position was really starting to get pushed hard.
Okay.
And then from there, it just kind of grew. And now the Democrats all own every media station in existence.
Didn't somebody that's Republican just buy CNN?
Pardon?
Didn't somebody that's Republican just buy CNN?
I'm going to look into that. I did not know that. Well, I kind of tuned out from media myself, or just the news.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched CNN in years. I used to religiously watch it, but it got more and more just raw radical.
I go usually to an Axios or an NPR.
I do that now. So Lincoln Project.
I have their
NPR,
apps. I go right to them.
I listen to that. I love Lincoln Project only because they're Republican based, but they're kind of more moderate. So that you get more. I don't know. They just kind of just speak what's actually on their mind, as opposed to being pushed by an agenda. But yeah, I started turning off CNN about 5-6 years ago. It just got more and more just is this even news at this point? It's just like a story you just created. Am I listening to a novel?
I ADHD'd and I was reading about who bought CNN. What are we talking about?
Who did buy CNN?
Okay, so technically they're owned by Warner Brothers, but they're run by John Malone, and he's a Fox loving guy. So
do you think?
See, that's how much I watch the mainstream media.
Right.
So do you think as what he's doing is he bought CNN and is pushing them to report radical left views to keep people polarized or to keep ratings up to compete with Fox? I really think I don't think that Fox or CNN, I'll put them on split screen sometimes and just laugh.
No, why wouldn't you buy out the opposition? CNN at one point was Fox News' opposition, if you want to call it that. If we're talking just purely opinion piece news, I feel like that was their direct competition. Why wouldn't you buy out your competition?
What's funny about Jimmy Carter, to switch gears a little bit, is Jimmy Carter's presidency, he's the one that he gave the Panama Canal back to Panama, which Trump is now trying to get it back from Panama.
Well, no, that's not what happened. What happened actually is BlackRock bought both the different ports. Okay, so they bought, I believe, the West and the East port. So everything now is, you can say Panama still, quote unquote, owns the Panama Canal, but it's like owning the door to the hallway.
Sam, this is a roundtable between average guys. We ain't bullshitting here.
You don't know who BlackRock is?
No, I know. I'm saying they did that on purpose. Panama owns it.
Well,
we know who really runs
Well,
it.
BlackRock owns the left and the right, and Trump ran against.
And it wasn't a problem,
BlackRock.
is my understanding. I know very little about this, but it wasn't a problem until we found out how much they were charging the United States to use that canal. And that's when feathers started getting ruffled, because we were only supposed to be charged X amount of dollars, and they're charging us exorbitant amounts of money. And that's where the problem is.
Now with how ownership is of
And we
Panama,
build it.
But was it such a problem that we had to do all this? You know what I mean? Was it is that where the problem was that our country's one of the top problems? No.
And this business, and I'm a Trump supporter, but this business he's going after Greenland now, what is that about? I know it's strategic for us.
Thank you so much, because I did not even want to bring up red, white, and blue land. That was, it's insane.
Hey, look, I support Trump because I know what it feels like from a business owner's perspective to be under his administration. And the money I made was out of this world. More money I ever made in my life, ever. And soon as he was out of office, it was gone. It was gone. I went from making $10,000 a week, gone for 4.5 days a week, to making grossing $2,500 and can't take home $400 or $500.
But off air, you said that was a result of COVID.
No, I didn't. You asked me if I made more. I was making more through that whole thing, and then
I thought
after
you said when COVID started, that's when they started.
No, I was making
money.
Well, pretty much his whole administration. And it's because the bottom line is, I'm not saying whether was because of him. It was during his time. Fuel prices went way down. Freight prices went up through the roof.
When you say fuel prices went down, you mean under Trump?
Huh? Correct.
Towards the end, right?
Pretty much we were way lower for a long time.
Do you think that might have something to do with COVID and supply and demand, right? So people aren't driving because of COVID, so it drives up the supply, driving down the demand.
The shutdown. And that COVID, that baloney you saw on TV about like at the borders of Florida, that bullshit cone set up, the blockades, that was crap. That was my lane of traffic. Those cones were there, the barrels were there. And what they did is they shut down the weigh stations and the ag stations down there, and they were running the trucks straight through down the interstate and pulling the cars and personal vehicles through the weigh station, but there's nobody in there. They're just putting you through with a sign, and you just drive through, and out the other end, there's nobody there. There was nobody checking. They checked for about 2 weeks, and that was the end of that. Even the ag station, right on through.
I think Sam's like, he's wondering do you think the price of gas was under Trump's administration was cheap because of Trump's policies or because of COVID?
Towards the end.
Towards the end.
When demand for gas plummeted, so
I can tell you what happened right after Trump left office to fuel prices.
Yeah, that's fair.
How it inflated?
Oh, tripled. And freight rates went from $6 and $8 a mile down to less than $2. You can't even
when
get
the
$2
economy
a mile.
was starting back up and the demand went way up, but then the supply chain started breaking down, is when the inflation took place. And you're saying that happened under Biden.
Well, and in the way it works for truck drivers, you get accustomed to a certain paycheck like anybody else would, and then all of a sudden, because some politician or some business owner moron that's a billionaire decides to flip a switch, the next thing I go from making 80 cents a mile to 45, 50 cents a mile.
So we can agree that this is more corporate greed, price profit inflation.
Oh, he'll tell you I've always been about that.
Yeah, it's corporate greed. So
left or right, we all want a fair shake. I don't care what side you're on. We want our vote to count.
So,
and if we lose, so be it. But we want our vote to count. I don't want cheating. I don't want stealing. I don't want making up of votes. If he casts his vote and I cast mine, they both should count.
Do you think that the last election was stolen? Is that what you mean?
What's that?
Are you saying that in reference to like the last election? You think it didn't count?
No.
You believe it?
I think
just so you know,
I think this last election was a lot more accurate than the one before.
Okay, so you think there was some kind of tomfoolery in the last election?
In the Biden.
And just so you know, I'm registered no party. I vote left usually,
Me
but
too.
I'm independent.
I can vote either way.
Right.
I think back in the day, I might have voted for Bush Sr.
I am an independent. I was Democratic.
You are registered
Democrat.
Okay.
Only because
I'm just saying, let's be 100.
No. I'm always going to be 100%
He says that.
I'm always going to be
But
100%.
everything he posts on Facebook is Democrat.
So, it's just funny. So I'm glad you said that because like people say that everything I post, well, from a right viewing way of thinking of things, that people say everything you post on, you say you're independent, but everything you post is either Democrat or left. But then when like people on the left, they're like, you say you're whatever, independent, but everything you post is on the right. It's all about how you view things. Because I've literally been called a Trumper by leftists. Which is, see how fast.
Okay, I'm sorry, but the far left, and if people from my TikTok hear this, you're probably just going to follow me, go fuck yourself. But the far left should be called something entirely different because they are not in any way.
I know,
they're the redhead MAGA of the left.
Yes, they're blue anon. They are blue anon.
Yeah.
And like
blue, purple, green.
Full disclosure, I just deregistered as a Democrat. It had this all happen within the last 6 weeks. So I deregistered as a Democrat and I went no party. I will probably always vote left, but they lost my affiliation. So like, I'm open-minded.
Off air, we were talking about this before we even got here about how I was registered Democrat. I'm now independent, but last election I was registered Democrat only because the paperwork showed that like, oh, you can't, and it was kind of deceptively like worded. You have to be a certain party to vote in the election. It doesn't matter
which
in the
primary. You
but
can
it
vote
wasn't
in the
specified
general.
That. It was just said,
Yeah.
like, you got to be in the party. I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah,
let me
no.
just, and that's on purpose. That's to control. Like, okay, we have his. I'm like, okay, I've always registered Democrat. I'm gonna just leave it this way, and then after that, I'll go. I did not know in that blink of an eye in that time I could be independent and still vote for in the primaries
Let me
or
ask
in the general election.
y'all got a problem with voter ID?
In what sense?
Like
Showing ID to vote.
I have to.
Showing ID
I
to
have
vote.
to show ID to vote.
No, I don't have an issue with it. I do not.
I don't either.
Do you think that puts a financial barrier in between somebody and their constitutional right, though? Because in order to get an ID...
Okay, I'm glad you asked this.
Okay. So in New York State, I think it's $58. It could be $8 or $58. I can't remember. But to get just an identification card, it costs money. So in order to demand people show
That benefit card's ID, legal ID, and guarantee you, if
Not
they
to
can't
vote.
afford to get to the polling
Not if you
station,
can vote with a benefit card, though.
No, you cannot. Not to vote, it's not.
It needs to be
Well,
a state.
But that is putting a financial barrier in
Here's the
between a person and their constitutional right.
Here's where my leftistness.
That's a problem.
where in the Constitution does it say we are required to make sure you have ID or that
That's
you
not-
have a ride?
I think that's not a federal law, it's a state law, right?
Well, that's an amendment, right?
I don't know if he's
It's got to
using
be in a
federal.
state. Yeah, you're talking state law.
However, I don't disagree with that, and this is where when people think I'm far left or leftist, it's gonna piss some people off here. I have no issue with having to show ID because that validates that I am who I am and I'm a legal citizen of the United States. If you can't afford $60 to get a damn ID, maybe you shouldn't vote. Go get a job.
I'm just
Vote
saying.
next time.
I didn't give my opinion one way or another.
Yeah.
I simply just said
But it's just the
that is
victim
putting a
like, it's
financial
always a
barrier
victim.
in between
Like,
an American and their
and
constitution.
You don't know my story.
We have redlining. That was a real thing. We have there's other voting tactics to keep people from voting. However,
Yes.
in today's world, if you are a grown ass man or a woman and you can't afford $60 a vote, go figure that out first. Then come back and vote.
I mean,
Maybe we don't
come
need you
on,
voting.
man.
If you can't,
People
you can't,
fall on.
I will loan you
We are
$60.
all in under this healthcare system. You've got to know this. We are one broken leg, broken pelvis, 1 week hospital stay
you have an
away,
ID on you, Sam?
one diagnosis away from having to mortgage our goddamn house.
I might have a broken leg, but I have a broken leg with an ID.
I can
Bro, like,
actually argue with that one too
It just goes in like
you
yes,
don't know what
it's-
people are going through.
I don't.
I don't care.
I
Everybody
know.
has a story.
But that's where we need to give a shit.
Look at my story.
I do care. However, I'm
And
raised.
you want somebody to care enough to not judge you based on just you, like you were saying before we started. You said everybody's immediate thought is he's a drinker. I'm not going to give him my liver. So you're asking for, and I said, like, that is not what my first thought was because my father-in-law passed away
That's
from
unusual.
drinking and lost liver. So I know a drinker. So you're asking for an empathy that you're not willing on the surface level to extend another person. You don't know what
Well,
somebody's
okay.
going
I
through.
personally won't say it's not a lack of empathy.
It just may come off like that. I'm just saying
Yeah, which
you're
is fine.
asking
Like,
for a
I'm gonna
grace
be-
that you're not willing to
if my
give.
stance-
He's
on
got a
this-
point, and he's right.
No, I agree.
I
If my
agree.
stance on
I
this,
do have trouble in my life, with myself, of having empathy for other people. I'm not going to lie. Being my background, my history, growing up where I
Yeah.
grew up, and that type of atmosphere, I don't like people. I don't trust people. If you are my friend and I invite you to my house, that's something.
Yeah.
Because
understand.
I
I feel
don't like
privileged. Then
people.
I feel appreciated because you invited me over many times.
I get annoyed when people show up in
You
my
show
driveway.
who you are because right now in real time you're like, no, that's just true. You're willing to learn, and that's
I
what
am,
most
and I'm
humans
here.
are not
So
willing to do.
I do want to
these
defend
days.
my point on. I still hold true. Am I empathetic? Of course. At least I feel that way. I've worked. Worked on many programs, helping build or be a participant in programs for people that are less fortunate or food drought neighborhoods, or just like different mentorships. But as a mentor, I've literally told people the problem with that is if you can't afford an ID, you can't use it as a crutch and say hey, you know what, this is the government or the system trying to hold me back. You got to get on. See, I almost cussed there. I got a church in 8 hours. You almost made me cuss.
No, you can cuss now. You can't cuss after midnight.
No,
You got like 5 more hours.
Well, and
no.
there's more people without ID than the illegals, of course.
But the
Which
thing
it's,
is, like,
it's
it's
against the
it's all
Constitution
about-
for them to vote to begin with.
It's about, for me, it's about accountability. It's my father told me. It's about accountability. Like, you can sit here and be a victim, or you can do what you need to do to get the money to have an ID.
What? I mean, man, you don't know what
I
you're
don't.
making a broad stroke
I am. However, there's
and
more
judging
to it than
people
that.
in a whole. Like
Well, I'm
some
not
people's
judging.
budget are down to the literal dollar these days.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing
And
about
some people's budget are in the fucking, I can't swear, I'm sorry. Some people's budget are in the negative every single month. And some people sit around their table and they cry when they're trying to figure out which bill do
I've
I
been
pay
there.
this month.
Bro, like,
Okay.
So
you gotta
I-
understand.
to just say that this
Why
person
is
can
that,
come
though?
up with $58 to buy an ID
I'm 54
and
years
say, I
old
don't give a shit that
with a
you have a
GED.
problem with it.
I've been.
I have a GED.
Right. And
I've
you're
been
doing
there.
okay, right? Nobody's
Making
ever
it
going to
along.
admit to being, where they want to be. None of us are where we want to be, but we're a lot further than a lot of people are, right?
Oh, I have much to be grateful
I've
for.
been in
in my life.
situations like I've
So people
heated
got to
my
figure it out.
bathtub with
I'm just saying,
hot water
extend the
from
same grace
stove.
to others that you hope. I wish people were quicker to grace and thoughtfulness quicker than they were to immediate judgment.
I'm not judging.
It's
However,
the same thing you wanted when you immediately told your story about how you need a liver. And I feel like everybody else on this earth deserves that same respect. And if we all acted like that first, and that wasn't a second thought, how much better could this
I
world
see what
be?
you're saying. I'm a hypocrite, basically.
No, we're
I'm
all
admitting it.
hypocrites.
No, I'm
We're
admitting
all
it because I
hypocrites.
did. I said one thing and then said the exact.
well,
He's
no,
right.
It's because you said one thing, but after gaining context, you changed your view on it, or just your
No,
opinion
I'm
on
talking
it.
about just now.
That's which is fine. This is great. That's what this is for.
I did. I was a hypocrite on that, but
I wasn't a
and
hypocrite.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But the
See,
next,
I'm not looking at it from
But
like
the
a
next
political.
time, what will you do when you see that
Well,
person?
this is what I want to get at. I stand on that, not just because I'm lack of empathetic. It's from what my father taught me. Like, this is, my father was in the Marines. I have a lot of family in the military. So on top of that, you have to understand that there is I come from one generation removed from you. No one's going to give it to you. You need to go get it yourself. My mother
Yeah.
taught me the same thing. So it's like, I can sit here and cry and be a victim about certain things. Oh, I can't vote. I don't have the money to vote. I'm going to get my ass up and get a job and make sure I have it.
But you're assuming somebody doesn't already have a job, but they're just in the
it is,
negative.
a second job. But my whole thing is, if I'm not in a financial position to where I can't afford an ID to vote, voting for president is the least of my
What
worries
about
right now.
able
They
to
always
get to
got
the
an
place to
excuse
get
why
an
they
ID?
can't take care of
What
their
about
responsibilities,
transportation
but
being
they
an
can
issue?
smoke and they can drink and they can party and go out to the bars and
That's
instead
That's
of
a
taking
broad
care of
stroke
their-
on a big group of people.
There's that perspective. I wouldn't go that far. So like, you just
Oh, I see it on
You're
the
just
internet all the time.
assuming.
It's because you're. I'm not going to say it's because you're being careless and just being foolish. But what I'm saying is,
Stereotype.
like, okay, from coming from a black perspective of things, like before Social Security was a thing, or public assistance and all that, when black folks were putting our backs were against the wall, my grandparents, great grandparents, we built our own shit. We built our own communities. Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street. Well, we had nothing and no one was giving us anything. And we all know what happened in Tulsa, but we ain't gonna go there. But what I'm saying is, when we have to do what we got to do, we do it. So what I'm saying is, if you're sitting there complaining about you can't vote because you can't find $60, you have no one you can borrow money from, any of that. If you don't go pick up a second shift in the goddamn McDonald's and go make up that money, like we live in a country where this is one of the few countries in the world where there's upward mobility to a certain point. You can there's nothing stopping you from getting from strictly poor to at least lower middle class, other than mentality. And I 100%
Mental
believe
health couldn't be a barrier.
Well, that's mentality. That's what I mean. Is that your fault? No.
Well, you mean mentality in the political
Well, no, not just that, but just mentality in general. Like, the only thing stopping you from getting to at least lower middle class is mentality. That could be mental health. That could be a crippling thing. I'm not saying it's your fault. Like, if you're dealing with crippling depression, chemically depression, no. But again, if I understand that and I identify that, then I can get the help I need to fix that, then to fix my situation. The whole point is, if I can't afford an ID, I'm not in a position to where I'm making an impact anyway. Because if I can fix the income issue where I can get an idea and pay for it myself, I can then fix myself and then move up.
If you want to fix the income issue, don't you think that, again, maybe people should be paid a livable wage?
Yes. However, if I can't even afford, if I have that voice and I have that opinion and I want to express that, if I can't afford a bus ticket, if I can't afford a car, you're never going to hear my opinion. However, if I get up and do what I need, the world's never going to be fair. It's not a fair world. However, if I get into a point where at least at baseline I have transportation, I have stable income, okay, now I got my idea, I can vote. Now I'm more powerful. Now I can, I can drive to a place and do a podcast and talk about my views. But if I'm sitting here stuck in that victim mentality, you'll never hear my point of view. You'll never get my vote. It's more than just like, you see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. I'm just maintaining that it is a financial barrier between an American and their constitutional right.
I agree. I just don't subscribe to the whole victim ideology behind it.
I don't.
Well, see, I think that
describe to the
looking
victim
at this
mentality.
victim thing wrong. I think instead of looking at the people so much as being a victim, maybe they are a victim. Maybe they're a victim of our government overcharging for what we already goddamn paid for.
That's always what it is. Like I'm not saying victim. Like you shouldn't. Like I'm not saying everyone's a victim and don't do nothing about it. Like identify what's causing the issue. Like you just pointed it out. It's a government inefficiencies. And from a black man's point of view, it's 300 years of systemic oppression that did not allow me to accrue generational wealth.
Okay, you can't, just because you just said that, you can't cut on DOGE no more on Facebook because
I'm gonna cut.
you ain't.
About that.
Because I'm going to have to call you out.
I still can, and I will
as
every
far as
single
that
goddamn
goes,
time.
here's my opinion on it. Again, I haven't listened to mainstream media on it. And you notice I've been very quiet on Facebook about that.
Okay.
I'm waiting to see.
Okay. Do you think there's a problem with
see
Elon Musk,
what
an
are the
unelected
results.
official, slashing government-approved, Congress-approved departments?
Some of them aren't. Some of them aren't. And
But-
also understand that some of
I
these
asked you a
programs
very
were created
specific
under
question. right
Obama.
there. I
Wait,
asked
repeat that?
if you find there a problem with Elon Musk, an unelected official, heading a department that doesn't officially exist, cutting and slashing government, congressionally approved
He's
offices.
not in charge of it.
But just the other night at his,
He's doing the audit
Whatever it
and turning
was
in the
in-
findings.
sir, I could show you footage where in front of a joint session of Congress, Donald Trump said that Elon Musk is heading that department, and Elon Musk stood
I'd love
up
to see it.
and waved. I can show you
no,
right now.
Again, this is what. This is exactly what I was saying with mainstream media.
We're gonna have to table Doge until next time
Okay.
because we're past our limit.
Okay.
But I love that. I will say I have real bad trust issues with Elon Musk, and not only just because he's Elon. I never really was a fan of Elon Musk. However, we have a South African guy whose grandfather was pro-apartheid, a technocrat, who is not a natural American citizen, who has access to all of our shit. I'm just not. It has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican. It's just like the richest guy in the
illegal,
world.
what
Richest
he's
guy in the
doing.
world is in the government of.
But Biden just hired 87,000 IRS agents to crawl up your ass over 70 bucks in your account.
If Biden were in office,
Bother you to have,
oh no, it
to have
does.
the audited?
That's the thing though. Like I'm also that guy. I'm like if this was in the Biden administration and we were talking under Biden, I would be saying the same. I would be critical of him as well. However, we're in a Trump administration, so I'm gonna talk about the things I don't like right now because it affects us for the next 4 to 8 years. You know what I mean? Like, because just because the president's out of office doesn't mean his policies don't stop going into effect. I personally have an issue with Elon because it's like, bro,
I have a problem with an unelected official in a cabinet position that doesn't exist.
a billionaire,
because
the
only
richest guy in the world,
Congress
having
can create a
access to
department.
our.
How will you feel about him if you find out and he can prove that a lot of that money that went to the UK was funneled back to the Bidens? How will that make you feel?
I think then if that is the case, the Biden should be tried, arrested,
exactly.
and
I
if
agree.
found guilty,
I
put
would
in
think that
jail.
a lot
I
of
know,
people are going to be very angry.
I'm hoping
People
I'm
that
wrong.
supported him are going to be very angry.
I would be as well.
I would too.
That's a big what?
Because
What
if it
if?
happened to me against Trump or any, I would. And
How
I'm
do you-
not that big a Trump supporter. I
What do we?
like
How many
his
minutes do we
plan.
have left? Are we
I
done?
don't like
We're
some of the things he
basically
does.
at the end here. However, I just want to get that point across because that's a good point. I think we'll come back next week and talk about it.
I think we can
more.
talk about that more.
Yeah. I just like, so.
I think maybe next time we'll talk about Doge, because God knows what's going to happen this week.
We'll table it here, because that's going to be a lot of fun. And I love that, because, like, that's a big topic right now with Doge.
We just brought up Doge. They're going to slash us. They're going to come in here and they're going to slash this podcast and this conversation.
We're not making enough money yet. Now, if we get a couple sponsors.
Wait a minute, the government ain't paying for this.
No, we are paying for it with our own dollar.
No, eventually somebody here is paying taxes on this. Always remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Eventually somebody here is paying taxes on this, and the government is getting
and
the
that's
slice.
another thing. The taxes, across the board are just ridiculous.
All right.
Where does it end?
So
It never ends. We're in a fucking nightmare. It's never going to end. And on that note, we're going to end here. Thank you, everybody. It's all over. We're all going to die.
So,
and
we have to dive next time we meet up. We have to dive more into our backstory. I can't wait to get more into that. But I really appreciate you guys for taking the time out.
absolutely. Until next time, gentlemen. Nice to meet you.
You too.
You guys have never met before. That's right.
I've known you a while.
Yeah, you guys both know
All right.
me.
Love you guys. Bye.
But yeah, I can't wait to see what happens on Facebook when this comes out, and then I can't. It's going to be a lot of hateful comments
to get out of here before Noble shows up.
That's going to be fun.
Now, well, let's just hope that the comments
Noble,
from
I
the
don't know
hateful
you. I
people
can't
understand
judge.
what
Okay.
the goal of this is, and all of us gathering together.
I'm being
You're not
comical
going to
about it.
agree with
Yeah,
all
I'm
three of
just
us
making
100% of the time, but try and see it from the three of us and what we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the Venn diagram. Like, three of us have different ways of views, or different views, different ways of life, different walks of life, and where are the commonalities here? That's the whole point of this. Like, we are all here today because we care about the country we live in and the situation we're in. That's enough to get something started. You know what I mean?
When
Exactly.
people talk, things tend to change.
And the most important thing in a marriage, we're all married, is communication. So why would that not be the most important thing in our nation? I'm phrasing that, Elon, you better not steal that. That's mine. It is March 8th, 2025. I said it first. No one